So, welcome back, Connor Black.
Excited to be back.
For
Excited to
people
be
that
back.
haven't heard of you before, which is not much of the world
A
yet,
lot of, well,
uh,
yeah, a lot of the world.
do you want to talk through the last like 2-3 years of like your golf and I suppose getting back to professional golf and what you're up to?
So I started teaching. Took a break from teaching after 2 years to caddy for my friend Johannes Veerman on European tour. Any of you guys that have listened to Will maybe know that. Caddied for him for a year. Fell back in love with golf fully, and I had that new kind of grounding that actually our conversation had in Trevose, just thinking of very like pragmatic, this is an issue, and just working backwards. Um, and man, coming back was a wild attempt. I played like 3 or 4 events in one year in 2020, and I finished last in all of them. Um, I one tournament shot a 50 on the front nine with Drew. Another tournament shot like 87, 85, called Will, and he said, well, then tomorrow try to shoot 86, 84. um, and That's kind of where it started. I was lucky that I had a lot of friends that were either on tour or were playing golf at a high level. So I was able to go start taking lessons from some good coaches and kind of try to relearn how to play golf. I kept Arco stats the first year, and I was like an 8 handicap with my driver. And then everything else was like a +4 or something. So it was just like one clear thing. And I went to Sean Foley for a couple lessons to try to find out what's going on. He had actually some really great things that he pointed out to me, but obviously not a ton of time. And then worked with a guy named Scott Cowicks for a year and a half, which he was fantastic. And he's who kind of got me back to playing pretty solid golf. And essentially by just learning how to hit a big shape and learning how to control my face by just hitting a big shape. And then was starting to have trouble playing courses that were very tight. So then thought, okay, I need to stop playing 12-degree spin axis draws. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out how to do that. So I started working with a guy in Dallas named Cameron McCormick, who I think is just like the best teacher in the world. I've worked with him for like a year now. Yeah, so I'm back. I played PGA Tour America's Q School last week. It was supposed to be 72 holes, just to give you a touch of an update, but they shortened it to 36 holes, and it took 5 days to do the 36 holes because of the weather here.
I saw you had massive floods and lightning, didn't you?
Yeah, turned into like a weird crapshoot. I shot 72-67, so 5 under, but missed status by 2, and
Oh,
then missed full status by 4. But it was frustrating because I've been playing really well, and I thought like 4 rounds I would have made it, but it turned into 2. So it was just a weird week, and I think it maybe was a good thing because I'm having a kid here in like 8 weeks, and no, 6 weeks, and the first Canadian event is in 4 weeks, so it's probably not the best time of the year for me to go somewhere for like a region for essentially like an elevated mini tour. So I'm using this time to try to figure out my next weakness or my next thing I'm going to conquer, which is my putting. So I've got 2 months to just grind on my putting.
yeah. So what's the plan over this season? Are you lined up some sort of local events, or are you gonna like do some Monday qualifiers or Corn Ferry or?
So far I've done a bunch of Mondays, some in South America, some here. The South America swing's done, so there's not going to be any down there. Playing just all pro tour events, which are small, like well, I guess they're like $130,000 purses. So over here for the mini tours, that's like a good mini tour size. Um, but there's really no benefit to winning besides money. So it's essentially just practice, competing and trying to practice winning and making cuts and stuff. They're 4 round events, which is great. They're run really well. Um, so yeah, playing all pro tour events. If there's a Monday qualifier that coincides with one in the same like similar region, then I'll play those. And I'm trying to avoid just going to Monday qualifiers because it's like quite an expensive thing just for a like a 1% shot to shoot 9 under that day. Corn ferries are harder than PGA Tour qualifiers because there's 120 guys in the field. And then in a PGA Tour qualifier, there's like 72. So it's just like statistically ends up being harder to qualify.
There's so many good golfers.
Yeah, with Corn Ferry, because maybe they're like half a shot worse than the PGA Tour guys, but like if you got 120, the math I think ends up not working in your favor, especially because most of them have like no like the same lower limits as them. So you're still gonna get like 9, 10 under. So yeah, doing that until Q school, play Q school, hopefully win Q school, then on PGA Tour next year.
Well, this is it. Something I wanted to ask you about because I think last time I was looking at your stats, which is a few months ago, you're kind of there. You're good enough. I sort of said to someone else that was asking, I was like, yeah, you're good enough when you look at your numbers to be on tour. So I suppose two questions. What are the things that you think have most improved about your game from shooting 50 on the front nine and shooting 86 in that event to where you are?
Yeah.
And then are there any things at the moment, you say you're putting, but are there anything sort of wider aspects of performance that you think you need to do to make it onto the PGA Tour?
My dad made a good point. I was very upset. My dad came and traveled with me, which was really fun and talk about nostalgic. Last 2 weeks. And afterwards, I was quite upset. And he made a good point that if I'm still hovering around the edge of qualifying, then I'm probably not there yet. And that it's probably a good thing that I don't qualify and that I have some time to continue to improve, which I thought was a nice way of thinking about it. Just going back to the beginning of your question, what has most improved from when I was really struggling? I drive the ball really well now. That's probably my best thing that I do. I keep stats with up game, but then I transfer them all into a spreadsheet and measure things like percent error, which is the distance from target line divided by total driving distance. And that percent error has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller, partially because I'm hitting it a little longer, but then also because my distance to target line errors are smaller.
What have they changed from too, if you got those numbers?
I have my current, I don't have whenever I was shooting 50, but my current,
Because you're, yeah, looking at your stats before, I think looking at your up game data and strokes gained is above tour average. So be interested to see what that's like.
yeah, average distance to target line. Um, my mean is 14.76 for the last 130 rounds or something.
Percent error.
No, 14.76 yards, 7 yards. So then you take that and divide that by my driving distance, which let me go to that is
410? Is it still 410?
yeah, no. 297.36. So 14.7 divided by what do we say, 297? So it's like 4.9%, which is a good, like, that's a good error. Generally, you try to stay under 5%. I do this on full swing on driver. Up game's great because it gives you just a lot. So it gives you your resulting average leave for each round. I input all of that stuff, so then you can even do it and then it gives you your average approach distance. So you can even do it for approach shots, percent error.
Is that what you're looking for across your game? Like under 5%?
Yeah, for full swing, I try to have it under 5%. And like our friend Kevin Kirk told us one time in that interview that we did, I try to make my practices to where 5% is like the baseline. And I'm trying to structure drills that require me to do it at like 80% of the time at better than that. And then if I have 20% that are worse than 5%, then that's fine. I've started working with this performance coach that Gonzalo Corazo Barbero, and he's more just on like the stats side, and that's been fantastic. So I'd be super excited to show you the stuff that we're doing there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the major difference is that I just drive it well now. I drive it a little further. I know this like what to feel in my swing when there's trouble left or right, just to like bias me slightly one way. And then the thing that's holding me back is certainly putting, and it's specifically 5 to 10 feet. Not even 0 to 5 feet. It's just 5 to 10 feet.
5 to 10, which is huge for strokes gained on tour because essentially inside 5 feet, you just kind of have the whole almost everything, inside four.
Yeah, exactly. So not very good. Yeah, to be quite honest, not very good. I am having a hard time with start line. I have a issue in my stroke. Cam's pointed out where I close the face, open it in transition, and I'm very keen on figuring out like what the force origin is of that closing because I switched to essentially a Lyingle balanced putter. It's called Axis One, and I'm still doing it, so I know that it's not the passive torques of a handle drag. It's just me physically rotating my face shut, and I don't know if it's coming from the shoulder or the elbow. So we're spending the next 8 weeks like just grinding on that, and I think as long as that gets up to snuff, I should be able to pretty confidently try to qualify this year for PGA Tour or Corn Ferry
That's awesome.
because everything else is great. Yeah. And then I'd say lastly, wedges, he's like such an incredible he doesn't get enough credit for full swing, but his wedges and short game like have helped me quite a bit. Just really thinking about getting the ball strike location on the face in the correct spot, and then trying to think about spin axis when I chip and pitch has just been a huge difference. Instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm going to hit a pitch there 50 yards," and not have some shot that's in mind. Now trying to hit like the fifth groove with like a cut gives my body a little more clarity on what it's doing for the shot, and it's helped me on my wedges as well.
Can you talk about this then? Because I think not many people get the chance to have lessons with some of the best in the world. So why is that sort of specificity been helpful for you, as a golfer in your wedge play? How has it actually improved your output, or do you think it just gets you really more dialed into what you're exactly trying to do?
I think it's probably dual purpose. It definitely gets you into the shot by thinking more specifically, and you're able to have something that you're reacting to towards or more. Um, but the specificity with Cameron is great for players that have played a long time. Uh, I can only speak from my experience because it gives you something to anchor on when you're practicing.
Mm,
And for example, like my first time I saw him, I knew him like passively in junior golf, but not very well. Um, and a client had re-introed me and got me in to see him. And the thing with Cameron is very business like, and so there's like no small talk, which is just phenomenal when you go take an hour lesson because it feels like you did like 6 hours of work in an hour. And we walked in and he said, "What's the issue?" And we'd been texting and he was just asking me to remind him. I said, "Well, I'm kind of hitting these like short right, like kind of wipey pitches.
yeah, yeah, they're awful.
They're horrible feeling." And I said, "I'm just not very good at 40 to 60 yards." And that was our whole first lesson. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Give me your club." Give me the club, sprayed the face. He has this incredible studio. Threw a ball down. He's like, "Place the ball on the dot." Place the ball on the dot because he has it exactly in a spot that you need it to be for everything that's going on. Hit the shot, hit the shot. He grabbed it, ripped the club from me, looked at the face, sprayed it again, put it down. Did that for 3 shots. Recorded 3 shots on like high speed video, um, all from that same spot so you could overlay them. And then TrackMan data, all of it. And then within like 5 minutes, my whole like wedge game was fixed. So
Really?
he's like, "All right, well, you're hitting second groove. Try to hit fifth groove." And I did it and I didn't. He's like, "Higher." Didn't do it again. Higher. And then I finally hit like fifth or sixth groove. He's like, "Good." And then he said, "Come over here." He did boom, boom on the screen, overlaid them, showed me the one where I hit fifth groove, showed me the one where I hit second groove, just for my intention. And it was like much, much more swing direction left, maybe a little more down. And most of that was just intuitive because you're trying to hit a shot. And he's showing me like, this is how you hit a wedge shot. And then he said, "Okay, now I want you to do that. Think about thumping the ground really hard and hit a pull cut." Because I was way kind of like under and handle raising. And I said like anything on my backswing because back then I had that bizarre backswing.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I don't care about your backswing. Just like if you get up here and you think that's where you're at, okay, now make like hit a pull cut from here. Just do it and hit it really high on the face." Did it for 3 swings, pulled that back up, showed the three of them together, and it was just like horrible, average, and it was like phenomenal at the P6 position. And he's like, all right, anything else? And it's like, oh damn, that was so quick.
You're like, no, no, no.
Honestly, the first lesson, I think I ended the lesson at 50 minutes. Because it was like I was working with a different swing coach, and it was so clear. We went on grass, tested it, and that's what it's like with Cameron. He did a 3 lesson with me that was the same thing, but it was 3 hours. He's such a nice guy, very just like he charged me an hour and did a 3 hour lesson with me, which was like real. He just was really trying to help me figure out why I hit the ball right occasionally still, and it was just the way he like works backwards for me. I think he's the best coach. He may not. Um, I don't know what his ranking is. But I think it's pretty high. But sometimes other guys are put up at the top. I don't know. They're probably great as well. But from my experience, Cameron's just like the best.
What I love about that is it's so simple, and I think great golf coaching should be really simple. And he's going through the basic process of all golf coaches should do, which is okay. We've got an issue with ball flight. What's strike? Because if strike's the issue, then we need to sort that out first. Looking at strike, and he's working that. Then obviously he's thinking, right, it's path and face, and then he's just giving you the most simple feel in the world of just exaggerate it that way. What about my backswing? Don't care,
Yeah,
because you kind of know as a golfer if you get strike and you get path and face right. Well, if you can do it consistently, then you're golden. You really are.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and then you kind of self-organize the swing into like, oh, now I can do it.
Yes,
When you get people who have all of this equipment, you can come away with, oh, I need to do this and a P6 this and this force should be going here and I need to feel my leg pulling away, but my hip stays back. And that is so refreshing to hear that you've got someone, of that caliber, just unbelievably knowledgeable, but just keeping it as simple as possible.
yeah, and he's a technical. He has a reputation for being technical, but I think it's a bit like I mean, it's correct that he is technical, but each shot that I've hit has been every shot I've hit inside his bay has been recorded and stored. Like, and at the end, he goes through and finds the ones that were bookmarked so that he can keep his hard drive somewhat like light. But it's matched up with a TrackMan um, data, which has 42 data points, 3 different camera angles, and force plates. And he never talks to me about force plates ever, but every shot he's recorded just to have it. And he's never mentioned one time. So what he told me he does is just like gives a passing look at it to make sure nothing blatantly weird happened, and then doesn't let the student get involved in it because it's irrelevant for the performance, like you mentioned. And it makes playing really easy because my first 4 months with working with him, every time I hit a pitch shot, I'd say thumpy fifth groove cut, thumpy fifth groove cut. And it gave me at least something like I'm gonna hit like a thumpy fifth groove cut, and you hit these really great spinny like finesse wedges like that.
That's so cool. It's really good. I've got about 6 questions I want to ask you next. But one came up where I was like, that is such an important skill to learn that you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned that one of the things you're better at now is being able to play golf and take the right side or the left side out of play when you need to. Most golfers obviously can do this one way because they have like a slice or a hook or a push. What did it, what was the process of you learning that for your golf swing? And was there any help with coaches or was that you trying to do that?
I'd say it was like 80% coaches, 20% being thrown in the fire, and then you just by chance do something one time and it goes way one way, and you're like, oh, okay. Links with it. Like for me, I work with Cameron currently, like my current feels, I was getting so across the line intentionally as a way to get my swing direction way right, which really just moved my low point back and it gave me time to square the face. So it was um, a really simple way of getting me to play good golf again, which I'm so grateful to Scott for doing um, because it was really bad before that. Now with Cameron, I'm much more on plane, and I control the face earlier in transition, so I get the face very shut early, and then it becomes a bit more of a hold. So, since if there's like crap, sorry, left,
You can say shit, that's fine.
if there's shit left, um, I'll be sure that I make sure I set my club at the top more down the line and almost laid off because I'm aware that that's going to shift my swing direction more left. and then I'm going to hit the ball a little bit more rightward. Generally, I'll have a touch more cutty. I'll tend to be, if anything, maybe slightly stuck or something like that. If there's shit right, I'll actually kind of shift swing direction right, and then it shifts everything left. The ball flight. I think this is a very intuitive thing for good players that they're not always aware of, but I think they'll generally kind of shift swing direction very subtly, 1 or 2 degrees, one way or the other, to either delay face contact so that it's later in the arc if you're shifting it rightward. So it's more likely that it's going to be square to left, perfect to left. I think you never want to take a perfect shot out. The idea is like, I want to do it where 50% of my shots are left and 50% are perfect. Or I shifted the other way where 50% of my shots are perfect or 50% of my shots are right. And like you just have 1 or 2 outliers that are out there. And that's generally you're trying, for me, I'm trying to do the same feels, but it's only on really challenging like holes where you have 1 or 2 shots per round where you just like those shots could, especially in a 2-round cut, those shots could really make your week. So you're trying to just mash it as far as you can, but let's gently bias it one way so we can reduce the potential of a 6 or something.
It sounds like you're doing them with backswing changes.
Yeah, I'm doing it mostly with the backswing changes, and then if there's stuff left as well, I'll make sure I have a good backswing, and then I will make sure that I really feel like I keep glove hand on top longer.
Yeah.
Or if there's trouble right, I don't do it with anything on the follow through. I just shift swing direction right, and I'm so used to hitting the slinging draw that it's easy kind of to turn back to that. Yeah, that's I think like just figuring out a very simple cue so that you can know what to feel when there's crap in one way or the other is super helpful for scores.
Is there anything else you could share from working with the other coaches where you're like, oh, that was a really useful point that I kind of, yeah, I'm so pleased at that.
I'll give you like the best thing I've learned from each coach.
Yeah. Let's start with Sean Foley.
Yeah, okay. So best thing they learned from Sean Foley. There was actually I took 2 lessons, but talked with him quite a bit as well during that time period. It's that stack and tilt is not the end all be all thing. That was what I learned. And it was nice because he had been down a similar path that I was on at the time. I was going down a like Mac O'Grady, stack and tilt, Aaron Badley 2006, type thing that I thought, okay, if I just center pivot, load my levers, unload my levers, like, bank the foot, unload the levers and extend. Oh, I'm going to hit perfect every time. But what ends up happening is you end up hitting your driver right, like every time because you get really narrow. And he saw I was like so stack and tilt, and he's like, bro, stack and tilt, like I thought it was all. It's not. The best golfers are trying to get the club out, bro. They're trying to get it out.
Why is this club out? Why this is really big at modern coaching at the moment. So why is that? And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he started it like being really trendy because I remember when I caddied, we played with Nikolai Hogard, who had a friend who was working with Foley, and he was telling me that they had worked on this as well, his friend, because he didn't work with Foley, but he had a Danish friend that was, and he was working on this as well. I think that for that time period, he was in with Lydia. I think he got a little more owner as well. A lot of it, I think, was based on, not based on, but influenced by Tiger's like 2001 swing and 2000 swing, where he was actually quite owner at the top, and he wasn't getting very radial. I think the idea is that when the wrists go towards, I'm not speaking for Sean Foley, obviously, but my interpretation of it is when the wrists get very narrow, what happens is not only does the lead wrist radial deviate, it also extends and the face tends to open. And now you've got not only a tighter window in terms of distance from face to ball to be able to square the face, but you've also have a face that's spun open. So I think in general, like Johannes made a good point before where he worked with people that your wrist can sometimes work kind of naturally in this kind of dart plane where it radial deviate, extend, and ulnar deviates and flexes. And that on the downswing, when you just get the club to where the left wrist is stay more stable, it tends to just be less radial. So I think that's more what it is. And I think that this extension and flexion really just kind of spins the shaft open, closed whenever the wrist is in that fully set angle. So I just think that feeling that, along with the fact that good players have really fast bodies, I think that it's easy to get everything sucked in, and then it's kind of late in the arc and it's spun open and the ball goes right, and you have to have the stand up throw. Whereas if you have a fast body, even though it's not real, like you're really not starting with the club head, it feels, if you feel like it's almost all in sync, it's easier to get like not stuck. I don't know if I explained that.
No, I think I get that with the wrists. I completely. I don't say it's the way I coach, but I get that concept of that. But I kind of feel like they talk more about trying to get like the right arm away from you as well, to try and get the arm.
That I think is actually residual from like Mac O'Grady and from Golfing Machine, because these were called power accumulators, and they were trying to unload your power accumulators, and you're trying to do that on the way down. And when people are trying to unload the power accumulators, like the Justin Rose rehearsal or whatever, and you're like trying to actively do this and maintain wrist stuff, for me, I think that's trash. That's my opinion. Just because I think that like I don't know. I think that that's not an athletic thing. Like the every good shot I've ever hit, like since switching to coaches that seem to help me a lot more, it's been more like externally somewhat tied. For Cameron, I feel like I'm throwing a ball with my right hand, and then that extends the left wrist. I mean, it flexes the left wrist, but I'm right-handed, so for me, I feel it with my right hand. Um, so like for me at the top, I'm here, I give it time and I throw it. It's like I'm directing a force towards the ball. And that feels more athletic than like I'm going to just straighten my right arm and it's not going to be tied to anything. So I like Sean didn't teach that at all. Sean was very like wrist focused. He was wanting you to feel like you're throwing the club head more.
So right, like almost casting it.
Right in transition, yeah, and trying to cast the crap out of it, because he really was just wanting this lead rest to get stable. And if you look at his pro center stuff that he's made, it's really like that's essentially it. Yeah. And I think his point was that for a good player, they need to feel a lot more of this. And for a bad player, maybe they have too much of this. So it's not going to be the same for everyone. But he said there's a reason Jack Nicklaus talked a lot about the release and feeling like the club's kind of being thrown. He said because good players back then knew how important getting the club back in front of you was, and releasing it, whereas we get so position bound. So I that was probably the best thing I learned from Foley, is that like well, that, and then also he was very mastery based, so he was similar to you as well, where that like the first lesson I took from him, he said something along the lines of "can't miss kid who missed Connor Black." And then I was like, hey, Sean, I'm Connor. He's like, hey, and we are chatting. And he's like, I want you to know, like, and it was like very blunt but very useful. He said, I want you to know that you're not a golfer that didn't make it. You're just a golf teacher now, and you're just trying to get better at golf.
Wow.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it took all the pressure off. He's like, you're not any, like at this point, dude. Like, I was 25. He's like, you're 25. You're teaching golf. Like, you're just trying to get better.
Love that.
That was very simple.
Yeah.
So that was the best thing I learned, was stagger tilt's not the end all be all. And also like reframing how I perceived myself in my golf journey is one that's like, I'm taking ownership of it, and I'm going to get better from this point forward, rather than I'm a victim of whatever bull crap I feel like had happened.
Missed out on the 4 majors that you haven't won yet, Connor.
Oh, yeah, I may win them still.
I'm banking on you. I want to come watch at win the British Open.
You probably put a fiver down. I wonder what the odds are. It's probably not even in the sheet. You're like, make this I want this to be a bet. They're like, it's not available. It's like, well, we'll do it for anything. Yeah.
Take my money. And what about Scott? Because I remember having these conversations with you around Scott, and again, it was really interesting because when I play with you, yeah, I could see you struggling with driver, and we had a couple of talks. I mean, you used to chat to me technically, but I always sort of said like you got to have a great coach that you trust and someone who can be with you and see you hit a golf ball. But I remember lots of discussions about how the wrists work on the golf swing. and you ended up finding Scott. And I remember you going to this ultra non-plane away. And at the time, talking to you, I was thinking, well, yes, I don't think this is how you get on tour, but it's a route forward. And I was fascinated to then see your shift back to more of a planar swing,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you've started to understand what those dynamics feel like of how the wrist should load, maybe as you approach impact. But what was it like? I suppose what did you learn from Scott on reflection? Because he made a huge improvement in your golf performance.
Yeah, he was the biggest change, by far. Scott is like phenomenal coach as well. If you're looking for a coach even to work with online, you can work with Scott. Generally, he's sometimes hard to get a hold of because he's got a lot of students. But if you kind of are pretty adamant on Instagram and keep direct messaging him for information on coaching, I'm not trying to get him spammed, but you could
Hold
probably.
on. Is this the Connor Black method of how you reach high important people? Because you're a pro at this.
Yeah, this is how I reach people. Yeah, just Instagram direct message them as much as you can. No, just joking. Don't do that. Don't be creepy. But you could send a few like messages every now and then, requesting like information on it. And he charged like a very normal rate for an hour lesson. I set up a tripod outside. Most of the stuff we did was virtual, and we would just work, and he would look at like my shot patterns that I'd send him from data, then we'd hit shots. And then um and yeah, essentially like we came to the conclusion at the first lesson I was that I needed to eliminate one side of the course. And he said, if we get your club head far enough behind your hands at position 6, which is the club parallel before impact, you're not going to hit it right. And we'll fix it. And that was like essentially his point, was that if I can get my club head far enough behind and have my hands arc any amount leftward from that spot, it's going to kick back out and I'm going to be hitting draws. And I think it was somewhat, in hindsight, a bit like controlled behavior, like cognitive behavioral therapy, like almost like doing something in a very obvious way at first until it became like I became confident again that I could actually hit a golf ball. Um, because for me, getting my swing direction, if you guys see my videos in the past, um, I don't know where you'd find it, but if you do have one, like it was so far right, my swing direction at the top, I was probably 30 to 45 degrees right at the top, like almost Matthew Wolf with him. And that just guaranteed the fact that my swing direction was right, which guaranteed the fact I would draw it. And I was able to play golf again, which was just a huge like sigh of relief. So yes, I didn't play very well on tree line courses. Yes, I couldn't fade it. Um, but it really like got me feeling like I was a golfer again. And I think that gave me enough confidence um, to like be able to move towards a more functional thing now. And it kind of bridged the gap because I was so far away, like definitely like an 8 handicap in driving. So he got me to where I was like a +2 in driving. And even though it wasn't correct, like I was able to play. And then now from that, I've been able to move forward and drive it better with a more functional swing, I think.
Yeah.
The most important thing that Scott taught me is that torques matter in the golf swing, and that if I get the club into a position at the top, it will influence somewhat how the club will come down. And thinking about my hand path force and my club head center of mass relation to it. And even with Cameron now, all of the changes, even if he hasn't mentioned it that way, have been based on my understanding of the swing in this way, and it's really helped me. So when I get to the top, Cameron wanted me to be less crossed and to be more down the line. I view it in a way of like, okay, I'm trying to get the club head's center mass to kind of disappear behind my hand path at the top. I don't want there to be any kind of like movement away from this, like this plane that I'm swinging my hands upon. And then in transition, like if I'm trying to hit a bigger draw, I let the club head fall behind the hand path. Or if I'm not, then I don't think about it and I just throw the club and hold with left hand. So for me, it was just the concept of hand path, like the hand, like the force vector from where my hands are and where the club center of mass is. That is the biggest thing I learned from Scott, and it just reconceptualized how I think of everything, even in short game. a lot of it, I'm just very aware of where my hand force is going and also where the club center of mass is. And it has absolutely changed how fast I can make changes because Cameron can make an adjustment with me. And I'm not trying to memorize a position. I'm paying attention to how the weight feels in my hand, which is a whole different thing.
That's really interesting.
So I'm not trying to memorize a spot from a mirror or from a video and remembering that. I'm just paying attention to the weight because I know what it feels like when the weight of the club is on this side and when it's on this side. And I'm just trying to make it the adjustment Cameron's making me have based on that. So that was a whole different way of reconceptualizing the golf, a whole different way of conceptualizing the golf swing, and by far the most important thing that Scott taught me.
And I think if we look at elite players, all of them have an incredible sense where the club is.
Yes, I think that's what that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we talk about a lot of this with amateurs, but I don't know about you, but you only get that through a huge amount of repetitions, thinking, stopping, pausing, making exaggerated movements. That really builds up that kinesthetic pattern of what the hell does a downswing feel like when it's over here or over there. You watch amateurs try and make swing changes, and it's hit ball, hit ball, hit ball, and there's none of that development of this like kinesthetic feel of these different movement patterns. So I think it's really, really interesting. The other thing I was thinking from a coaching perspective, as you were saying that as well, is as a coach, you kind of get upset when people like have you for some sort of lesson and move on, but you really forget that like Scott taught you something which will last a lifetime and developed you as a player. Even if you don't go back and see him again, that's a massive aspect of your development as you move on. So it's sort of
Yeah, literally club head awareness.
mm,
Now, I didn't have the thing with Scott that I felt like I improved much moving to Cameron is club face awareness. I had very good club head awareness with Scott, but I felt very poor club face awareness. And Cameron taught me that I have more control over that than I think I do. I thought most of it would be a passive thing. And he showed me that no, it would probably be a lot more active. And I think is like played out in the data that at least seems like he's been correct. But for me, this is all for me.
yeah, yeah. Do you actively think about controlling that club face through the golf ball in terms of angle, but also loft, I suppose,
I think about
with say short game driving and
well, like if I was to hit like a flighted 7-iron, I would control loft mostly by moving my. I'm a golf teacher as well. If it's not obvious,
should be.
it's maybe a bit like complicated, but I control um flight more by where I feel like I'm positioning the center of my mass as my whole body in relation to the ball, and then essentially the flight comes from that. So I do like bend over a touch more, get a touch closer, move the ball a touch back, and maybe feel like I fall a touch more into my left. And next thing you know, the ball is coming out like 5 degrees high. That controls loft. In terms of face, I absolutely think about it. And a theme of Cameron for me has been trying to do it as much early as possible. The earlier you can get the work done, the better. So I'll try to really early get the work done. I guess think like someone like Tom Kim or even Jordan Spieth, they kind of get the work done early with the club face, and then it's a little more of a hold.
Okay.
That for me has been huge. So I'll try to get the club face awareness, the club face adjustments done from like P4 to P5.5, where I feel like I have a little more control in that phase because things are kind of starting slowly up here. And then through the impact, it's like a big movement that I'm focused on. It's either like if I'm thinking glove hand on top, it's just left shoulder working up, something very simple that's very aggressive. I'm never trying now at this point to manipulate club face from P5.5 through impact unless it's a hold, and that's not like a twist. It's like a whole body movement this way, and it's very aggressive. So that would be the only face thing. And then I'll move to Cameron. So best thing I learned from Sean Foley, stack and tilt's not the holy grail. And that I can reframe how I view my golf game and my journey in a way that gives me more like freedom to feel like I'm improving rather than being damned by my history. He's very good on the emotional side as well of coaching, and that's why I think he's connected with so many players, especially like Lydia Ko. He helped her quite a bit for some time. I think he's just really good at that. Scott Cowex taught me how to hit a golf ball again.
You were pretty good before, but yeah.
Well, no, not shooting 50 on the front nine, the pro and stuff, but directing, like paying attention to my hand path and my club's center of mass in relation to it, and more importantly, what that feels like. So that club head awareness. And then for Cameron, the most important thing that I've learned from him is, I'd say, professionalism. There's a couple things. Professionalism. When I go there, Cameron is so prepared. It makes me want to be so prepared when I go there. It's like just being around people that are at a very high level makes you want to perform at a high level. And he does everything at a high level, which is really amazing, especially when you're working with a coach and you're paying money and you're driving, so far to go see someone. It's just like, I feel a ton of respect. For me, like, I feel like he's giving me a lot of respect by how prepared he is for a lesson. And I'm just a mini tour pro, and he's got so many other people. So I'd say professionalism, and then also club face awareness. That would be the two things from Cameron. Like, how can I become aware of the club face, being open to potentially other feels, because I've never heard of anyone controlling it with the right hand, which makes no sense to me now that I think about it. But everyone talks about left hand bowing. But a lot of us are right-handed, so like like maybe it'd be better, to have a right hand feel. And
Both hands are on the club, and yeah, if you're right hand dominant, yeah, no, it was a big learning for me. Again, I kind of like came across it when I was trying to manipulate my left hand, and I was like, this is so much more obvious.
yeah, and I kind of feel bad sending this out there because I honestly feel like that's such a huge advantage. But go for it. Like, people that are feeling their left hand and they're left-handed, it's like, what are you doing? Like, I
Do
don't
you know
know.
what?
For
I
me,
think a big one as well. This is with amateurs who really struggle to get cut through impact. If you just change the feel to pointing your right hand down to the ground, it's amazing how much this is exactly the same thing. Yeah.
that's really the feeling in transition. It's like when I'm throwing a ball, like in transition. You never throw a ball from an extended wrist. I mean, from a flexed wrist.
No.
Like,
No,
could
no,
you
no.
imagine throwing it like that? You just shove it down. Like, you'll throw it and it goes this way. And that's like a very natural thing for right-handers, especially if you grew up in America where you're throwing things a lot. You guys kick everything, so I don't know.
We're great at kicking stuff. Yeah. Don't ask me about throwing, Connor.
We should have better face control than you guys, but I don't
This,
know.
yeah, well, maybe you'll win the Ryder Cup in a few more years. Just
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
advice for young golfers. So I think this can come from you as a player, you as a coach, you caddying on tour and winning on the DP World Tour, you hanging around with Johannes and all of those awesome guys who are already out there crushing it. What's your thoughts for those golfers who are, say, maybe teens and trying to get down to like five down to scratch, or maybe plus handicaps and wanting to turn pro and thinking like, how do I do it? Because we know how much time we both invested into trying to do it, and you're doing a lot better than me, so you should tell them.
I think if you're trying to get better, you have to take ownership of getting better and not be a victim of your coaches. Because if there's something, like, you're ultimately the person that's responsible for everything. Every shot that you hit is 100% on you. And if you're working with someone that you feel like isn't giving you the thing that you need, then honestly, it's still on you to find what you do need. A lot of people I see that turn pro and that don't seem like they're really even seriously like going about it, or they seem so far away that you could almost make a guaranteed bet that they won't make it. There's a lot of that. There's probably like 70% of mini tour pros that, and I was one of them as well. Whenever I was first starting, that just seemed so far away and also not even on the right path that you could pretty safely put a fiver that they won't make it. I'd say you could learn a lot from those people, and they tend to be a lot more passive. The ones that seem that they're really like on it they take 100% ownership for every single thing that they do, and they figure out a way to get better. And that for me was as basic as, okay, I'm going to start keeping statistics. um, I'm going to make a plan each week, and I'm going to have someone in my life that can help audit my plan and see if I'm making decisions that are logical. So for me, it was finding Gonzalo, someone that can keep me accountable. But then also like keeping stats, seeing where the blatantly huge holes are. Sometimes it's obvious and you don't even need stats, but sometimes it's not as obvious and you do need stats. And when you find that big gaping hole of like, this is just this is not tour level, then taking ownership of that and saying, okay, well, I'm gonna make it tour level. If I was to make this functional, what would it look like?
Mm.
How would I have to perform? What could move me towards it? Asking those questions, taking ownership for it, and finding the resources that you need, whether it's joining AMG Golf online to figure out things about like just gears 3D. That's athletic motion golf. They're quite good on just like basic library information. If it's ignorance of that, if it's finding a coach that you like, if it's driving to a different state to see a coach you like, that you could be with, and like taking ownership of initiating things. If you want to get in to see someone, you can't just send one message and expect that they're going to reply. They've got 10,000 people that are probably messaging them. You do have to separate yourself in some way, and not in a way that's weird, but in a way that's intelligent. Like either finding a client that they have and then messaging them and seeing if you can get a referral in. You have to take ownership of the process. You cannot just be a victim of, oh well, I'm not lucky because I live in a place where there's no good coaches. And at this point, there's so much information online, and everyone's so interconnected. One person I saw when I was seeing Sean Foley was from Great Britain, and I said, oh, is he on the Challenge Tour? And Sean said, no, he just messaged me 10,000 times on Instagram. And I finally said, sure. so, so like, and then he flew over from Great Britain. So like the point is like, as long as you do it intelligently and respectfully, um, you have to take ownership of your improvement process. The ones that feel like they're a victim of their parents, um, of their club that they practice at, of not having technology, of their clubs, like those are the kids, and those are the mini tour pros that when I see they're very that way, I don't feel very worried about playing against them, because they're just so passive and they think everything should just roll in towards them. And that's not how this works. You have to actively find out what you're bad at and then find a way to get better at that.
Yeah, yeah.
And you are 100% responsible for it.
Yeah, and I think watching you externally, I think you've done this really well. The two things I kind of like add on that just a little bit from your journey is number one is if you want to become a tour player, you need to start practicing like one now, not in 6 months' time. So people assume, oh, I'll get to a scratch level and then I'll do that. No, 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 no. You've got to start practicing now. And then the other thing, as you said, is make it objective as possible. Put the most objective, clear numbers up and become maniacal about hitting them every day in practice. And when you don't, you know why you're not on tour. And it's so easy to bury your head in the sand and not keep the numbers because you can pretend that it was just bad luck. But if you're not hitting those numbers, you shouldn't be on tour.
Yeah, and this should be like a good time to plug you, because that BreakX golf app that you developed, like I have a student, I won't say his last name, his name's Andrew, and he went from a 22 handicap to like a 4 handicap.
Oh, with your coaching.
Yeah, and this was in 2 years, 2 years. Yeah, so and most of it, like once I just taught him face and path, then he's just practiced his butt off, and he has a BreakX account that I actually pay for because I just was like, hey, I you need to practice properly. So I have a BreakX account that he has that's under his name, and he's just like loved gamifying everything and being able to keep track. Like he sent me a text message the other day. He scored like a minus 21 on like a 10 to 20 foot game or something like
No
that.
way. That's unreal.
Yeah, and he's like every day he's just so excited to go like beat his PRs, and his scores have just been like, and I've been gone so much that like I'm not doing almost anything now. Not trying to promote myself as a lazy coach, but he's really he's really just like
You plug break X golf and just trash your own coaching. It reminds me of something Scotty said, Scotty Scheffler in an interview a few weeks ago, which is he does all of the prep through the week. So when he turns up in the first tee, all he knows is that he's done as much prep as possible. So he almost doesn't worry about the results. You look at that planning that you've done for a few years now and refining it. Is that how it feels to you when you turn up on the first tee? Do you just feel like you've done the work and done more work than anyone else?
I do. I've started to show up to tournaments, and even though I'm not winning these tournaments, I still show up feeling with a lot more confidence compared to compared to everyone else.
How long did that take? Because you've been doing the right thing for 2 years.
I think it took a lot of trial and error. The first year and a half with like swing changes. I think I've had 6 months with like not swing changes. So that's been the time in which I've actually begun to feel this confidence coming towards a tournament. But it's very hard. Like I do a lot of TrackMan combines. It's very hard to show up to a tournament not confident if you're scoring like 88s on TrackMan combines going into it because like for if you don't know what TrackMan combine is, they'll spit out numbers and you have to hit a number at a target. And then based on your proximity to the number, it'll give you a score and then you cap it off with 6 drives. And it's a really nice, quick 60 ball test that takes like 35 minutes. And like, it's nice, like knowing in college I was scoring like 79s on them, but then like seeing that you're beginning to score like upper 80s every single time. It's hard to show up to a tournament and feel not confident because you just have like the data there that shows that you're good enough to do it. And that really helps. I think that's the whole purpose of having like an app like BreakX or having a plan like me, even if it's just like just on a piece of paper or in a journal, is that if you have like 4 or 5 things that you do, but you always do them, and you start to like see your performance move in a direction, that gives you that little wall of confidence that I heard that one rower from England talk about, that you have to have this wall of confidence because training, you're gonna have so many bad days, but just looking back at the wall and seeing all of the ways in which you are improving really helps you keep going because this game can really beat the crap out of you. Um, and I think that's essentially what BreakX does, and what Gonzalo does with me is that I'm keeping track of everything in my practices. I keep data. Every practice has data that I'm recording, some data, and I'm able to see over time if I'm actually improving or not. That way, when I go to a tournament, it's more like, okay, a tournament's just like a thumbprint of where I am. It's not like in the long run, my tournaments are going to represent my game. That's the way that I think of it. So I don't even need to worry about this because my goal is to just get so good that my thumbprint becomes like undeniably good. Um, and that's kind of the idea in practice is like, okay, I am going to like one big goal is this quarter I want to score over a 90 in TrackMan combine. And so it's like if I'm scoring over 90s in TrackMan combines, then like of course I'm good enough at ball striking. Or doing the 10 to 20 foot game that Andrew was talking about, and like scoring over a 20 or something, like that's, oh man, I'm going to be really good at mid-range putts, or whatever it is. It doesn't,
You're holding 60 over 60% of putts from 10 to 20 feet in practice.
yeah, if you're doing that, yeah.
That's unreal. It's like, well, when I putt well, I hole over 60%. You're gonna hit the ball at the hole with confidence, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. And then even if you make 30, then you're probably at tour average. Like you can that's the one way to look at it is you're like, I'm gonna get so good that my mental game won't matter.
I love that.
That's I think the idea. And that somehow like
Yeah.
makes you better as well.
Mm. So even when you turn up and have a bad day mentally, you can still perform and compete.
Yeah, because your bad gets okay. And I think that's the big thing. If you play with like I remember when I caddied, the thing that made me that surprised me the most was um how straight everyone drove it generally, how good everyone was 5 to 10 feet, but also how average everyone felt at the same time. And so it was like a nice kind of balanced thing.
Why is that? Like the bad shots that hit, or
Yeah, like it just felt like there was only one guy we played with for 14 months that sprayed it. So that's telling. So you should not spray it. Well, actually, 2 guys. One of them won the tournament we played against, Lucas Herbert. He sprayed it a little bit, but he won the tournament, so whatever. Like, I guess that debugs my point. But generally, there was we played with I guess probably 200 people during that time period, and 2 people sprayed it, and one of them was leading the tournament, so it was more just like a nerve thing, I think. And the other one wasn't playing well. 198 guys kept it in play. And Lucas kept it in play most of the time as well that day, obviously. And then so they really didn't have big misses. That'd be one big thing. They putted 5 to 10 feet very well. However, they did it. A lot of people did claw. Some people did like this. They did anything they could, but their 5 to 10 feet was very good. And then it felt very average. Like they felt like they hit a lot of shots to 25 feet, and they had made a lot of 2 putts, and they laid up on par fives and hit two wedges close, and they made one putt over 20 feet, and they shot two under, and they made a lot of money every year, and they kept it really simple. Yeah, I think just having a plan, sticking to it, getting some confidence from what you're doing in your practices helps you when you get to a tournament feel like you're actually prepared and ready to compete. But then also keeping in mind that you don't have to be perfect at all, and that's kind of what I was coming at with this, is that you can turn up and have a bad day. Like those guys, probably 90% of their days didn't feel great. 10% were incredible, and 90% probably felt average for them, but their average was good enough to make a good living on the European tour. And that's, I think, the goal is to get so good that your average is good enough and you can be shit mentally and still perform. That would be the goal. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off. Yeah, takes a lot of pressure off.
That's awesome. Awesome place. Thank you so much as always, pal. Thanks for coming in.